The Westies opens with a tense confrontation inside an abandoned warehouse. Davy, one of the gang's hot-headed members, has kidnapped Vinny, an associate of the Italian mob, and is violently interrogating him with a gun pressed against his face. Although Vinny tries to stay calm, it is obvious that Davy has no intention of letting him walk away easily. Before the situation spirals completely out of control, Sweeney, the respected leader of the Westies, arrives with the rest of his crew. Their presence immediately changes the atmosphere. Sweeney orders Davy to release Vinny, reminding him that the Irish and the Italians are currently observing a fragile ceasefire, and that any reckless move could destroy the peace both sides have worked to maintain. Davy refuses to back down. Fueled by anger and eager to make a name for himself, he ignores Sweeney's authority. Realizing that direct orders are not enough, Sweeney turns to Jimmy, someone Davy trusts far more than anyone else in the gang. Jimmy calmly approaches his friend and convinces him to hand over the weapon. Believing the crisis has finally ended, Davy surrenders the gun, and Jimmy immediately passes it to Sweeney. However, instead of showing mercy, Sweeney raises the weapon and shoots Davy without hesitation. The execution shocks everyone present, but Sweeney makes his message unmistakably clear. Davy acted alone, and by killing him personally, Sweeney proves to the Italians that the Westies have no intention of violating the truce. Afterward, Jimmy questions Sweeney's decision, arguing that Davy's mistake hardly deserved a death sentence. Sweeney disagrees completely. He explains that sparing Davy would have encouraged other ambitious gang members to challenge his authority and imitate Davy's reckless behavior. The execution was never just about one man. It was about preventing future rebellion and protecting the organization. More importantly, Sweeney reminds Jimmy that the gang cannot afford a war with the Italians. Instead of wasting lives over petty conflicts, he wants everyone focused on a much bigger opportunity. That opportunity is the construction of the massive Javits Center. Projects of this size usually fill the pockets of the Italian mob through corruption and kickbacks. But because the development sits on Irish-controlled territory, Sweeney has managed to secure a valuable share of the profits. If the arrangement survives, the Westies could earn money from the project for years without spilling unnecessary blood. Jimmy understands the logic behind Sweeney's decision, but Davy's death continues to weigh heavily on him. A short time later, Jimmy and his girlfriend Bridget attend Davy's funeral. The atmosphere is somber, yet no one steps forward to deliver a eulogy. Bridget quietly encourages Jimmy to honor his fallen friend. Though reluctant, Jimmy eventually addresses the mourners, speaking with genuine emotion as he says goodbye to someone who had been part of his life for years. Following the service, friends and family gather for the traditional wake. Bridget cannot hide her anger after noticing Sweeney casually attending the funeral of the very man he executed. She criticizes his hypocrisy, calling his appearance shameless, but Jimmy immediately warns her to keep those thoughts to herself. Speaking openly against Sweeney could put both of them in danger, so Bridget reluctantly drops the subject before Sweeney joins them. Sweeney then spends a few moments speaking with Jimmy, reflecting on Jimmy's long history with the gang, and reinforcing the loyalty he expects from those closest to him. Once Sweeney leaves, another guest shares encouraging news with Jimmy. His longtime friend Mickey has nearly completed treatment at Bellevue Hospital, where he has been recovering from the psychological trauma he suffered during the Vietnam War. The episode briefly cuts to Bellevue, showing Mickey undergoing electroshock therapy as doctors attempt to ease the painful memories that continue to haunt him. Soon afterward, Mickey is finally discharged. Jimmy and Bridget welcome him back by taking him to a local bar for drinks. Mickey is happy to see his friends again, but he quickly notices Davy's absence and asks where he is. Jimmy avoids the difficult conversation, assuring Mickey that they will talk about Davy another time. Elsewhere, Sweeney meets with Gotti to settle the issues surrounding Vinny's kidnapping. Gotti thanks him for handling the situation responsibly, acknowledging that killing Davy helped preserve the peace between the two organizations. Sweeney responds that maintaining his agreement with Big Paul is his highest priority. However, He also points out that Vinny should never have been wandering into Irish territory and provoking his men. When Vinny attempts to defend himself, Gotti immediately silences him before the discussion can escalate. Their conversation soon turns to the lucrative Javits Center project. Because the federal government is involved in its construction, Gotti warns that law enforcement will closely monitor every criminal organization connected to it. He advises Sweeney to keep his crew disciplined to avoid attracting unwanted attention. Sweeney responds by telling Gotti to keep his own men under control as well. Before ending the meeting, Gotti delivers another message from Big Paul. An Irish Union leader named Deke has reportedly been causing trouble by speaking too freely. Sweeney initially dismisses the concern, believing Deke is simply trying to negotiate higher wages for his workers. Gotti makes it clear that this is no longer a labor dispute. Big Paul wants Deke permanently silenced. Understanding exactly what that means, Sweeney accepts the order without further argument. Later that evening, Sweeney visits the pub where Jimmy is celebrating Mickey's return. After warmly welcoming the veteran home, he quietly tells Jimmy to meet him later because an important job needs to be handled. Once the celebration ends, Jimmy and Bridget bring an intoxicated Mickey back to their house, settle him onto the couch, and finally enjoy a private moment together after the long evening. The following morning, Jimmy and Mickey report to Sweeney's office at the Javits Center construction site. Sweeney wastes no time explaining their assignment. Deke must be silenced. Jimmy immediately understands that Sweeney is ordering an act of extreme violence rather than simple intimidation. Although both men are willing to carry out the task, Jimmy initially wants Connor and Sean to accompany him instead of Mickey, believing his friend is still too unstable after everything he endured in Vietnam. Mickey takes offense, insisting he is ready to prove himself again. After some hesitation, Jimmy agrees to let him come. The pair track down Deke, following one of his speeches. They ambush him and overpower the men protecting him before delivering a horrifying punishment. Rather than killing Deke outright, they cut out his tongue, ensuring he will never speak against the organization again. The gruesome trophy is then delivered to Sweeney, confirming that Big Paul's message has been carried out exactly as ordered. After completing the brutal assignment, the story shifts to Officer Keene, a corrupt policeman who earns extra money by taking bets from fellow officers on baseball games. His routine is interrupted when his superior orders him downtown for what appears to be an internal affairs matter. Instead, Keene is introduced to Special Agent Polk of the FBI. She explains that the Bureau has been building a RICO case against the Gambino crime family and believes tensions between the Italians and the Irish are close to boiling over. To demonstrate how serious the situation has become, Polk plays a secret recording of Gotti discussing the possibility of abandoning Big Paul's arrangement with the Westies and wiping out the Irish gang altogether. Because Keene has spent years policing neighborhoods controlled by both organizations, the FBI believes he is the ideal person to monitor Sweeney and report any signs that violence is about to erupt. Keene immediately rejects the offer, unwilling to become an informant. Polk quickly reveals that refusing is not really an option. She knows about Keenan's gambling operation and, more importantly, about his son Danny's connections to the Westies. The FBI even possesses photographs showing Danny spending time with Sweeney's lieutenant, Breen. Realizing the Bureau has enough evidence to destroy both his career and his family, Keene reluctantly listens. Concerned about his son, Keene confronts Danny and demands to know why he has become involved with the gang. Danny refuses to explain himself, brushing off his father's concerns and telling him to stop interfering in his life. Unable to convince his son to walk away, Keene decides to speak directly with Sweeney. He visits Sweeney at the Javits Center construction site, where he first collects his regular payoff before revealing that the FBI wants him on the Gambino task force. Sweeney surprises him by encouraging him to accept the assignment instead of refusing it. From Sweeney's perspective, having someone inside the investigation would be invaluable, allowing the Westies to stay one step ahead of the authorities. Keene agrees, but only if Sweeney removes Danny from the organization before he gets caught in the middle of a gang war. Sweeney refuses, insisting that Danny stays where he is and ordering Keenan to simply do his job. With no better alternative, Keenan returns to Polk and agrees to cooperate with the FBI. His only request is that Danny be protected if the investigation eventually brings down the Westies. Although Polk refuses to make any guarantees, Keenan believes she understands the importance of keeping his son safe. Meanwhile, Bridget attends a gathering where she passionately speaks about Irish independence. After finishing her speech, she notices a familiar face in the audience. The man is Brendan, someone she knew years ago in Ireland when she was still known as Sarah and deeply involved in the Republican movement. Brendan explains that he was imprisoned for resisting British rule, but eventually secured his release through bribery before making his way to New York. Brendan admits that reconnecting with Bridget is only part of the reason for his visit. He also wants to use her access to the docks to help store a mysterious shipment arriving in the city. Bridget immediately refuses, wanting no part in whatever operation he is planning. Brendan doesn't argue. Instead, he gives her his card and tells her to call if she changes her mind. The following day, Bridget unexpectedly meets Brendan at the docks, indicating she has reconsidered. Before agreeing to help, however, she insists on seeing what is inside the crate he wants hidden. Brendan hesitates before finally opening it. Inside is a rocket launcher. Shocked by what she sees, Bridget asks what he intends to do with such a powerful weapon, but Brendan refuses to answer. He simply instructs her to keep it safe until he returns for it. Although deeply unsettled, Bridget ultimately agrees, suggesting that the ideals she left behind in Ireland may still have a powerful hold over her. When Bridget returns home, she tells Jimmy about Brendan's arrival. Jimmy reacts with frustration rather than excitement. He reminds her how difficult it was to leave her violent past behind, and Brendan's return threatens everything they have built together. Before they can continue the argument, another problem demands Jimmy's attention. Jimmy meets Mickey at a neighborhood bar, hoping they can finally enjoy some time together after Mickey's release from Bellevue. The two friends begin catching up, but Mickey avoids discussing the trauma he experienced during the Vietnam War or his treatment at the hospital. Their conversation is interrupted when Vinny arrives, accompanied by an Irish woman named Erin. As the evening progresses, Vinny openly disrespects Erin, creating tension inside the bar. The argument escalates until Vinny deliberately reveals that Sweeney was the one who executed Davy. The revelation leaves Mickey furious. Before the situation turns violent, Jimmy drags him outside. Once they are alone, Mickey demands to know whether Vinny was telling the truth. Jimmy refuses to answer directly, instead insisting that everyone must follow Sweeney's leadership if they want to survive and profit from the opportunities ahead. His unwillingness to deny the accusation confirms Mickey's worst fears. Realizing Davy was murdered by his own boss, Mickey storms away in anger. Later that night, Vinny drops Erin off before climbing into his car. As he settles into the driver's seat, he suddenly discovers Mickey waiting in the back with a gun pointed directly at him. Mickey forces him to drive to an abandoned warehouse, recreating the same terrifying situation that opened the episode. Soon afterward, Sweeney, Jimmy, and the rest of the Westies arrive at the warehouse. Sweeney calmly orders Mickey to lower the gun and release Vinny, hoping to prevent another disaster. When Mickey refuses, Sweeney quietly signals Jimmy to shoot his old friend. Jimmy appears ready to obey. He raises his gun and takes aim, but at the last possible moment, he turns away from Mickey and fires directly into Vinny instead. The Italian mobster collapses dead on the warehouse floor, leaving everyone stunned. Jimmy has chosen loyalty to his friend over loyalty to Sweeney's orders. By killing Vinny, he saves Mickey's life, but destroys the fragile peace between the Irish and the Italians. The murder threatens to ignite the very gang war Sweeney has spent the entire episode trying to prevent. With Vinny's death certain to provoke retaliation from Gotti and the Italian mob, the season opens with both criminal organizations standing on the edge of an explosive conflict. leaving Sweeney to face the consequences of a situation that has spiraled completely out of his control. Meanwhile, Jimmy seemed confident they can just sweep their Vinny problem under the rug by making him disappear. With tensions and infighting threatening to break out, Eamon follows Jimmy's plan and agrees that they'll all feign ignorance about Vinny's whereabouts. Along with taking the bullet out of Vinny's skull, Breen, one of Eamon's closest confidants, talks Jimmy and Mickey through handling the body, including chopping off the limbs. Trash what we can, cook what we can't, is the mantra he goes by. The gore brings back bad memories for Mickey, whom we learn is actually a Vietnam vet. In the midst of cutting off body parts, though, Jimmy comes up with an idea. With Vinny's severed hand, he suggests they orchestrate a jewelry store break-in and then leave Vinny's fingerprints all over the joint. Once that's done, and they've left, Eamon can call Keene to get in on the case and make it seem like he's on the run. Jimmy believes that would not only alleviate the heat off their gang, but also distract the Italians long enough to let them finish the job. Jimmy will then burn his hand once they've left fingerprints around the city and out of the state. Eamon eventually concedes, with the promise that if they mess this up, then he'll happily hand over Mickey and Jimmy to the Gambinos and take their chances with the Italian wrath. Elsewhere, Keene shows up for his first day working with Polk. She tasks him with digging into Eamon's connections at the Javits Center, including details on financials, bid rigging, and more. Keene is not sure he can do this, but his record speaks for itself. Polk has also done her homework, bringing up how Keene has done 2 tours of Vietnam and is actually a Force Recon Marine. With the NYPD, he even has a Medal of Valor too. However, somewhere along the way he lost his mojo, falling off the wagon and ending up on this corrupt path of misery. Anyway, Keene heads to the local bar where he's not exactly subtle in grilling the barman Ray. A lot of this stems from his alcohol problems, and it doesn't take long before he's called over to see Eamon. Well, Eamon is given the lowdown on Jimmy's successful heist, where he and Mickey rob a jewelry store, leave Vinny's fingerprints over the joint, and hightail it away. Jimmy's next move is to get those fingerprints over to Boston, with the idea being that he's fleeing to Canada. Eamon has a guy called Liam O'Shaughnessy, who runs Corktown Pub over in Boston. He could be just the ticket to help pull this off, although Eamon is still not convinced it'll work. As for the Italians, Vinny's wife, Lena, is quick to confront the mob regarding Vinny's disappearance. She can't shake the feeling that he's dead, and all she knows is he was with an Irish woman called Erin. John Gotti agrees to look into this personally. That's a real problem because Erin actually saw Mickey lead Vinny off at gunpoint. Mickey has a soft spot for Erin too, which explains his emotional outburst at the end of episode 1. He hands over a rather expensive bit of jewelry to her and offers a sympathetic ear if she ever wants to talk. Speaking of falling off, Bridget is visited by Brandon again, who tries his luck to win her over and continue working for the IRA in secret. That night, Bridget comes clean to Jimmy about the shipment and how she did this for the cause. Jimmy's uneasy about the arrangement, especially as Brandon is the sort of man where if you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. Still, he reluctantly agrees to keep this between them. When Keene finally does rock up at Eamon's, he's skeptical about the boss's plan and questions whether this will work or not, calling in the jewelry heist. It doesn't take long for word to reach John Gotti, and alarm bells immediately ring. Yes, Vinny is a bit of a loose cannon, but he hasn't robbed jewelry since he was 20, so this feels like it's a setup. It's not going to fool Gotti, and it only adds extra heat to the situation. None of this is helped by Jimmy Rourke's gang, who don't take the plan seriously at all. They drink beers on the way up to Boston, take regular breaks, and they even goof off with the severed hand too. They miraculously do make it to the bar and smash the place up, with Liam's blessing, of course, while leaving fingerprints everywhere. On the way back, though, they're stopped by the police. That's a real problem, given how much they've all been drinking. When the cop finds the severed hand on ice, Pat kills the cop and stages the entire scene, including Vinny's fingerprints on the gun, and leaving his license, to make it seem like he killed the cop. Meanwhile, John shows up to see Eamon at his office, questioning him about Vinny. Eamon feigns ignorance, but he soon learns about the police situation when the gang returns. He orders them all to burn the hand to dust, and also burn the car they drove up into to avoid any repercussions. Eamon knows the truth will come out eventually, regardless of how hard they work here, and he warns Jimmy as much after. As for John, he finds Erin and questions the girl over Vinny. When he finds her wearing that expensive bracelet, she's forced to reveal who gave it to her at gunpoint. Well, after burning the hand, Mickey is then grabbed by John's goons and kidnapped. Meanwhile, Bridget learns that Brandon's plans with these explosives and rocket launchers are a little closer to home than she first thought. The IRA have set their sights on New York,